welcome to Titans of Trade. I'm your host, Constance Dunn, and today we welcome a notable architect responsible for some very cutting-edge and remarkable projects all over the world. Welcome, Brian Pinkett.
Hi, Constance. Thank you for having me.
At some point, rather young, you decided architecture is it. How did that come about?
Oh, my goodness. You're not going to believe this, but when I was going into ninth grade, I found a school system outside of DC that had architectural drawing classes in the high school. And at the time, ninth grade was still middle school, and they had mechanical drawing classes that I could transfer into the architecture classes when I got to 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And so I thought that was great. This is where Mom, Dad, we got to move so I can go to this school. Then I found out that in the 12th graders across the county got to compete in a design competition for a home to get built if it wins the competition. So my parents agreed, we're going to move to this school district so I can go to the school system so that I could get to 12th grade and then participate into this competition. And luckily, I won the competition. And that was the first house I had ever designed that got built. And I was, 17 years old at the time. And so that kind of jump-started the whole thing for me. And it's been great ever since.
Love it. Teenager, first commission.
What's also amazing about that process is that there were students at the vocational school who actually built the home, and the home was given away to a needy family. Yeah, so there were electricians, framers, mechanical engineers, and these were all 16, 17, 18-year-old students who were being mentored to build in the trades to keep the tradition of the trades alive.
Fascinating. So do you recall the first time you drove by or walked by this house once it was completed?
Yes, I do. It was at the ceremony when they gave me my award and handed the family the keys, and it was just a tearjerker.
And to have seen your drawings, your sketch, it must have been something to see that translation.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we think, as architects, we think that way when we're drawing. We think into the future in 3 dimensions and in color. So I had seen it in my head night after night after night. And so when I saw it in person, it really kind of looked like a model, because I'd been envisioning it the whole time. And I was very, very pleased. But no one was more happy about it than my mother. She was so happy. And and from there, it just continued for me. Just like most people who go to school in upstate New York, they want to work in New York City. So I landed a great job at a firm, small mom and pop firm in NoHo. And we did a competition in Montreal, and we won that competition. And shortly after that, I got a call from Michael Graves, his office, wanted to interview me, and they offered me a job. And at the time, I didn't want to leave New York. So they had a satellite office in Soho. So I worked there for a while. And then they asked me to come to Princeton, where the main headquarters was, and work on these big projects there. And so I moved to Princeton, and I worked with all the partners at the time. And I was probably the first person who moved from partner to partner. And it was because each partner saw the value of having me on their team, and they wanted me, and then they'd want me back. So I would be moving around. But what I did learn there was the value of treating your people right. And Michael Graves was a gem of a boss. He was very cordial. He listened to people's ideas. And he treated you like a person, not just like a number. And that's something that I thought, listen, I'm working with one of the top architects in the country, if not the world. This is something that can be recreated in another location. And when I met Richard, there were 4 people working here at the time, 4 architects, and I came in as the 5th person, and we just took off from there, one step at a time, growing the firm, cultivating the strategies and the policies and of the firm. So the real way I got here, though, was that when I was in Princeton, I was tired of the cold weather, and I was either going to go to Miami or LA. And I came to LA first, and I never went to Miami looking for a job because I just loved LA. And I met Richard, and he told me, he said, listen, Brian, I'm going to Indonesia. If I land this project, when I get back, I'll call you, and I'll offer you a job. And I said, okay. He went to Indonesia, landed the job. He called me, and I was on a flight. That's how it happened.
So many people listening will know Landry Design Group. One of the things they might not know about is something that I think is very distinctive about the firm, and that's the fact that there is modern and traditional works. So the body of work, you guys really produce things that are very different and very faithful kind of to the idea of modern architecture, likewise kind of traditional architecture. And I'm wondering how, from a capabilities perspective, the firm's able to do that so faithfully.
Oh, my goodness. Great question. So at Landry Design Group, we don't have a signature style. And that's, in some ways, it's good. And a lot of architects don't think it's a great thing because they have their signature style that they want to continue to push. For us, it's more about the clients and creating the architecture that they want to live in, because we do homes, and homes are more personal and individual. So we've been able to develop our firm to be able to do modern work, traditional work, transitional work, and everything in between. And that's what's made it a lot of fun.
And there's something called hybrid architecture, hybrid design. That's kind of a specialty, and it means something very specific at the firm. And if you could just kind of share what that really means.
Well, hybrid for us is sort of a fusion between the traditional architecture and the modern architecture, and you're bringing them together, pretty much pulling out the best of both worlds so that we're living in warm, cozy, comfortable homes like a traditional house, but they're open, airy, light, with great spaces like a more of a modern house. So that's kind of what we, in a nutshell, what we would consider a hybrid.
So now you yourself are really steeped in classical architecture. I mean, you're on the board of directors of the Institute of Classical Art and Architecture. You're on, I think, the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and your background, your training as an architect was very much steeped in classical. So as, I could say you have a purist background, but you're able to kind of execute also very modernist works that are still faithful to a kind of a classical sensibility. And I'm curious, how are you able to do that?
Well, actually, I went to Cornell University, and Cornell University at the time was one of the best architecture schools in the country, if it still isn't. But modern architecture was definitely what we learned through architecture school. And it wasn't until later in my years at Cornell that I understood that the modern architecture came from traditional architecture. And so that's when I focused on understanding and being well-versed in the traditional architectural styles, because people like Le Corbusier, his architecture, you can clearly see where it comes from classical architecture. So for me, it's all the same if you understand what it is you're trying to accomplish.
I see. So the ideas, so like the I guess you'd say like the approach, what they were trying to achieve with classical is not so dissimilar with what they were doing as modernists. Perhaps just the execution was different.
Absolutely. So during
Okay.
the time, the classical architecture, there's proportions, there's orders, there's rhythm and flow. There's a whole series of different things that are sort of the guidelines or rules for the particular style. And the first modernists studied that and said, okay, I understand the proportions, but I'm going to change some of the decoration. I understand what a pilotis is, but I'm going to do it in a different way. But understanding a golden section, that all played into what looks really good as modern architecture when it first came out. Now, architects do things, if they don't have details on it, they call it modern. If it has a few details, they call it transitional. And that's not necessarily architecture.
Okay. So I wanted to show people who are watching an example of, I guess you'd call it contemporary work that Landry Design Group did in some Malibu. I believe this was constructed along PCH. It's very glamorous. So this project, Brian, very contemporary, incredibly eye-catching. But I imagine that everything you did there, everything that people worked on with this, there's a reason for everything. So I'm curious, just some thoughts about this project.
Sure. So like you said, this is in Malibu. It's right on PCH, on the ocean, backs up to the sand. And our idea for this was sort of to mimic the sail and turn that concept into the home, right? Because you're right on the water. So you can see these beautiful lines. Now, they're not exactly sail lines because that wouldn't look right to live in a sort of a TP or a triangular home. But this was the flow, the fluidity of a sail, the wave of an ocean, that sort of concept. And the fact that it's on PCH, and for those who don't know PCH, it's Pacific Coast Highway, and there's a lot of cars and traffic. So there's no need to have windows facing that road. So we were able to create this beautiful sail, introduce this cube, which is actually the parking garage. Part of that metal panel opens up so you can pull right in behind that car. And then the house opens itself up to the beach.
That's fantastic. And so with the design of this entry sequence, if that's what you can call it, is this something that maybe the client really wanted, or how did this come about?
There's a couple of reasons why we set the entrance off to the side like that. The sites on the beach are very tight, as you can imagine. That property is very valuable, and every inch matters. And for homes, we have a side yard setback. So we're able to take advantage of the increased side yard setback to give a beautiful courtyard entrance that has art and water flowing through it. And you get a glimpse of the ocean as you head towards the front door. And the idea is that you're going not just around the sail, but you're kind of going a little bit under the sail as you enter into the home.
So this is a very visually arresting design, but it's rooted in a kind of a truth of the area, of the environment, right? There's a lot of elements at play, yeah?
That's right.
That's why that works really well. It's interesting because when you talk about the sail, I was like, because if it was something that was just dramatic for the sake of drama, it might look like, okay, but it makes sense. So really interesting. And I wanted to contrast that with a very different project. This is something that was done in Beverly Hills. So this one's interesting because would this be considered hybrid?
This is a form of hybrid, yes, it is.
So what were the clients looking for here? It's, again, very striking.
So yes, so in this case, the clients they they went to France and they loved the Hôtel du Cap. So they loved the symmetry, the sequence of French traditional architecture. However, they didn't want a French style home. They wanted a more of a modern home. And so what we were able to do is take the partie of a traditional French estate, chateau, or the Hôtel du Cap, which has a center entrance and bookends that mark the extent of the width of the home. And we took the roof off. We modernized the details. You can see around the windows, as opposed to have molding, we have little slots that are filled with light. So in the evening, they glow. The espalier on the walls is now organized within a frame, as opposed to having it just grow all over the building. The topiaries are very well organized in a modern way. And so once we did that, the clients really enjoyed the transition from traditional French and order to this more modern, contemporary rendition of it.
Right. And then the way that the casing is lit, around the windows, that really works, but that could have easily not worked. You know what I'm saying? Again, this fusion that the firm does really well, that I think is just really, it's like things that could go way wrong, but they somehow pulled together really, really work. So I definitely encourage someone to check out the portfolio that you guys have, because there's some fascinating things. So I'm interested in collaboration. So these are huge projects. Landry Design Group is increasingly a global firm. And so what you're executing and the scale of what you're executing and the precision that is required, I'm curious how collaboration is approached at Landry in general.
Oh my goodness. It's integral part of our culture from day one. Even our hiring process is a collaborative effort. All of our projects are designed in teams, in collaboration. We look for great ideas. It doesn't matter where it comes from. If it's a good idea, we're going to run with it. We do work all over the world. We've done work in 17 different countries. We've worked in so many different languages with different architects and local designers. So collaboration is really the key to making great projects. The whole saying, it takes a village. Well, it really does take a lot of people who are really experts in their field, love what they do, enjoy the process, to contribute to having a successful project.
Right. And sourcing talent in 17 different countries. And again, at this level, is there somebody that's, whose job it is to basically just go out and scour the best and the brightest in like Croatia or Dubai or I don't want you to give up the secrets of the store.
We can't tell you all the secrets. Well, it's different everywhere we work. There's no one, way of getting things done. The key is to be able to get it done, right? So we're going to deliver a beautiful design. Our clients are going to love it. We're going to work very hard to make sure that they're happy with what it is we're about to execute. And then we have to find our team members that are willing to come in, no egos, be a part of it, no hidden agendas, and really push the envelope and try to make the next project better than the last one.
And as principal, and you've been, for decades and decades, you have a lot to do with shaping that culture and creating it and, leadership. And I'm curious if there's something that you guys do, whether it's strategically or tactically, to have a desired culture and really keep it intact and move it along. Because the firm has been doing very well for decades at a high level. That's not easy. You know, that doesn't just naturally happen, I imagine. If you wanted to share
Sure.
what you guys do.
I've been here over 30 years working with Richard, and you're right. It's all about people, right? So you got to find the right people working together to create these beautiful homes, to communicate with our consultants and, interior designers, engineers, and other architects, contractors. For us, it's always been from day one, the interview, right? In our interviewing process, we tell everyone that we're creating a place where we'd want to work, right? As the bosses, as the managers, we're trying to create that. But we know that the culture is created by the people. We can't force that onto people. So everyone here understands it's their responsibility to be a part of the culture that they want to be a part of. And so we have discussions about whatever's going on in the office, what we're doing, how we're getting things done. We have suggestion boxes. We have meetings where we talk about how are we doing as managers and how are we doing as leaders to make sure that people are moving in the right direction. We've created mentorship programs where we meet with every employee once a month on an ongoing basis. They go through a program that continues on as they wish. We have committees where different team members come together and they talk about whether it's a computer committee or presentation committee or details committee, so that we're all on the same page and everyone gets to have a little say in the areas that they're interested in. We have a great HR department. If there's ever any issues or conflicts, we address them right away. Everything's on the table, nothing under the table, no water cooler talk. If there is, we try to address it, resolve it. Again, it's people and everyone brings their own baggage to wherever they go. And we're architects, we're not, therapists. But at the same time, we understand that if you're happy, you're listened to and understood, then you have a better shot of doing your best work, right? And so we're here. All we can do is tell everyone we're here for you. If there's any issues, let us know, but we can't force you to come and talk to us about it.
See, I love to hear that because it's a firm of a certain caliber, and someone might have an assumption that, it's everybody up at this level and you better, just have your A game and you gotta, which you do, but you have to be this person that's maybe not, you seem to think about the individual.
That's right.
If that makes sense. And that's really, really great. And, going back to this idea of Landry Design Group being where they've been and occupying this space for so long, with you there over 30 years, like kind of thinking of the long view, what would you attribute the longevity of this firm? Again, executing at this high level, you think, there's a burnout or maybe, a firm not being in vogue, but it keeps going and going. And what do you think? What's the reason for that?
I think it's, we continue to challenge ourselves, to grow. There's a saying, A players like to work with other A players. B players like to work with C players so they look good. And so we push each other in a healthy way so that we can all get better. We pull each other, we push each other, we support each other. And I think if you feel like you're always learning and growing, you're going to be happy. If you feel like you've plateaued and there's nowhere for you to go and there's nothing new for you to learn and no one's listening to me and no one cares about me, then it's not going to be a healthy situation. So I think if you're asking me, what is it that's allowed us to do what we do for so long, it's because we never rest on our laurels. We're always pushing and striving. And even our clients, they're expecting more. So we're giving them more and we expect more of ourselves. And it's fun. It's exciting. to come up with new ideas and different ways of doing things and new technologies. So, I think that's really the key to success.
Yeah, and speaking of new technology, see, that's a really good point because architecture is changing, and you're responding to that. You're not saying, "Oh, well, we're do the same system over and over again." You're also thinking of it as a living being, and so it's okay. That makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious with new technology, anything you wanted to share about AI, whether if you guys have been integrating, what you think about it in general, kind of broadly.
Sure, AI is amazing. And I'll tell you this, anybody who says AI isn't there yet, they aren't there yet. They don't understand the capacity, the capability of this technology. And it's up to us to teach it to do what we want it to do before it does what we want it to do, so we can say it's there, right? So we're using AI. We want to stay ahead of it as much as we possibly can. There's a ton of different programs and apps you can use. Some are better than others. Some allow you to drop in pictures. Others just have prompts. Some you can do both. And we're exploring all that. And it's not going to replace the curation and the design of an architect, but it will definitely speed up the potential ideas and possibilities. And ultimately, it'll be able to create documentation a lot faster than humanly possible.
Interesting. So as an artist, you're thinking it's not going to diminish, but it can expand capabilities, even for smaller firms.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you think about, let's say if Picasso had AI and he put in 10 of his paintings, right? He might then generate in his head something else that is going to take him to a whole nother level that he hasn't even thought of yet. And it may not come out of the AI rendition, but it will spark something in him, right? So if you look at it that way, it's not like I'm not trying to replicate my work with AI. They're not going to do what I do. But it's just like when you're working with a team member and you're bouncing ideas with each other like this. If you get 10 ideas from a person, you can get 100 ideas from AI. It's 10 times faster, right?
Right.
So
this is just an observation. Back in the day when you were studying, and I know you studied in Rome with, I think your professor was Colin Rowe, and you're studying all these antiquities and ancient buildings and learning architecture in this very kind of foundational way. It's just funny, back then, did you think you'd be talking about artificial intelligence and architecture? It's just kind of
idea. No.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Unexpected.
It's amazing how each generation, they come up with something that's intended to make our lives easier, right? And I'll say it does make our lives easier when it works, right? Technology is great when it works. When it doesn't, we're handcuffed. But it's fascinating and it's exciting at the same time. A lot of the younger generation, you think they're lazy, but they're actually very smart in finding ways to make their lives easier so that they can do more with less time or less energy, right? Yeah. So for us old timers, we think, hard work and you'll get it done. And their way is, let's get it done as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And here's a program that'll do it. And here we go.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah. You gotta embrace it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that as like old timers, there's a nice advantage to being embracing technology, but also having an understanding of how to organically be inspired, whether in nature, the importance of walking out in nature and going back to the source, the fountainhead of all those things that have always kind of inspired us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
the mix of the two, I think are really important, I did want to ask about Landry Design Group increasingly being a global firm and increasingly working overseas.
Mm-hmm.
And I did want to share an image of a project. It's an Asia Palace, we'll call it. What has that been like, doing things like this on different continents?
Yeah. So this project, I would say, is for an architect, a once in a lifetime dream. The clients were amazing. The project is epic. They were true to their style, to their mantra, to whatever that was driving them as a family. They didn't waver at all, and they were so gracious to learning what it takes to build an estate like this. They were also very open to hiring the right people. We would fly people in from other countries, train the locals on how to do certain things. Their work ethic was unbelievable. This project was truly a village that built it, and the collaboration was unbelievable from the clients all the way down to the gardeners, the workers. It was unbelievable.
And there looks like there's a water element as well. We have an image that it almost looks like, a castle out of a storybook. It's so otherworldly.
Right.
I'm curious about that, how you did that.
Let me just give you a bigger picture. The whole project's on about 35 acres. And we created this man-made lake with a bridge that goes over it. You can see in the picture. This building you're looking at now is a sports pavilion. It's got an indoor pool, a basketball gym, fitness gym, spa elements on the inside. It's got a tennis court on the outside and little golf course area. So it's the ultimate sports facility, and we put it right on the edge of the lake. So you can actually take a boat. If you can see there's a little dock there. You can take a boat, go under the bridge, go to the other side. There's an island also on the lake. It's pretty magical. The home itself is a tripartite design where the main home is where the parents reside, and then the other two wings are where the kids and their families reside. And so it made for a great program. It worked out very well in terms of the symmetry and the layout, and the execution was unbelievable.
What would you call this style architecturally?
Oh, this is classic French, traditional French style. Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Creating castles and creating lakes. There you go. That's extraordinary. And with you traveling and being involved in these projects, is there a place or a project or something that you think about still from time to time that has been personally inspiring to you, artistically or architecturally?
Yeah. I get that question a lot, what's your favorite home? And I always say it's the next one, because we're always looking forward to the next one. But I do think about all of our projects, right? The ones that we've done and what made them successful. What are areas that we could improve for the next project with a similar situation? So I don't have a style that I say, oh, I like designing this style versus that style, or location. It's all interesting, inspiring, and challenging each and every time.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And I imagine there's a lot of inspiration too, because you're in different cultures and locations.
Mm-hmm.
And after all these years, what keeps the work of architecture just really, still firing for you?
It's really the people that I work with, the staff, the consultants, the interior designers, landscape architects, contractors. But as far as the architecture goes, seeing young architects have an aha moment or design something that they hadn't designed before and just be so thrilled by their accomplishment, for me, that is huge. I've designed a lot of homes, different styles, and I realize that for me, what I really get out of it is helping others to accomplish some of their dreams and guiding them as best I can, mentoring them, coaching them to reach their goals. I tell the staff that I mentor, I said, I want you to, climb up your ladder, right? There's no one here at Landry that's in your way. Okay, you're on your own ladder. But I want you to realize that when you get to the top of the ladder, that you're on the top of the building that you want to be on, and you didn't want to be on the building that's across the street. So it's not about just racing and moving fast. It's about understanding where is it I'm trying to go and what's the best way for me to get there.
So taking ownership of your journey or your destiny in a
Absolutely,
sense.
yes.
And being and being very, I guess, introspective about it.
Or intentional about it. We have reviews twice a year. We meet with every employee once a month just to talk about their growth potential. Where do they want to go? Are they touching the things that they want to touch on? And these meetings, 15, 20 minutes. It doesn't take a long time, but it's important that we don't let it go 2 years down the road and somebody's like, I never got to do X, Y, and Z because nobody offered it to me. Well, we don't have that problem because we're talking about it.
See, that's an extraordinary strategy for engagement and to learn about your team. That's amazing because the firm is no doubt quite big. So, 15, 20 minutes a person, but that's a investment that I imagine pays off incredible dividends.
Absolutely. We have so many people here over 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. I'm here 30 years. It's incredible to see. It's like a family because we've been here for so long. And when someone new comes in, they'll tell you they've just been embraced. They just love it. Our interns that come for the summer don't want to go back to school. They want to stay. They want to stay here.
Right. Because if you are that architect or that person, part of the staff, before you're going into that monthly meeting, you're thinking a little bit.
Right.
It forces that, and that's a really wonderful thing, just to keep those thoughts going and to really stop and reflect. We don't always do that, but in this case, it's kind of like, this is something that we're doing every month.
Oh, Constance, they're not just thinking about it. It's on paper. It's written down. Oh, yeah, it's efficient. You come in, you have your paper, it's already filled out, you go through it. The next month, you review what was last month and what's in the future month. It's very, very efficient. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Right. So also at this point, we were talking about inspiration and like homegrown inspiration, where people find it and what kind of floats their boat. And I'm curious, what is interesting to you personally or artistically these days? What's been what do you find very interesting? Yeah.
Well, right now, the only thing that's on my mind is my farm. I just bought a farm in San Diego, and we've started a nonprofit animal sanctuary. So that's been, it's been very humbling, right? Saving animals that were headed to a kill pen and trying to create a space for my children to grow up in nature. And so that's been an interesting thing. And so it's got me thinking about what's important, At the same time, we have a potential project to do some health and wellness centers, And so what does that really mean? What's really health and what's really wellness? Is it just physical beauty? Is it internal beauty? Is it emotional? So, it's like there's so many different things. And if you think about architecture back in the early days, it was a social, it was a social sort of world, right? It established class. It established, there was a city home and a countryside home, and it was very distinct in architecture and location. So now things are getting to be a little bit more muddled and kind of jammed together, and you don't know where your movie theater is and where your bed is and your spa. So everything is all right there. But how do you separate those things so that you still have sense of peace in your bedroom and you still have joy and excitement when you go into these entertainment spaces and you don't feel like you're just right on top of it, right? So just understanding and thinking about place as it relates to architecture has been a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, no doubt. And thank you for helping the animals. You're like, it sounds like the projects and what you're doing personally, it's like supporting life in different ways. So
absolutely.
That may be the key to why everything's so fresh for you still. They're kind of all one, your work, your play, your leisure, your endeavors. And
that's right. People will talk about work-life balance, especially during COVID. And for me, my philosophy, it's always been about life balance. I don't see this as work, and I don't see that as something else. It's all my life, and I get to enjoy all of it however I can.
Well said, and wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today, Brian.
Thank you for having me. I really did enjoy it.